All right, my first video about typology and religion, at least in this new series. And I'm going to make it easy, simple, kind of lightweight, and see how things go from there. Um, I thought, a lot about like, how would I open this up? Should I do a general introduction? And then I'm thinking, no, I'm just going to kind of jump right in. And I have some notes here about the 16 types just to have them, down for reference. Um, Disclaimers, I'm going to talk about each of the types based on personal experience. I'm not going by the best version of a particular type. I'm not going by the worst or loser version of a particular type. But in general, the average person of a particular type. And again, there will always be exceptions. And I'm going to go over Enneagram versions and also maybe Socionics Quadra versions also. But for now, I'm using the classic, I've grouped these in the classic Keirsey-like manner with NTs, NFs, SJs, and SPs. Starting with the NTs, of course, these are going to be a little bit more scientifically minded and theoretically based insofar as the religious theories go. And I'm just going to jump right in. INTJs. They lead with NI, have FE in creative, and I would say these functions come together to make INTJs really independent when it comes to religious beliefs. I would say online they come across as being generally atheistic or agnostic, but in real life it doesn't play out that way as much, at least not in my circles. But still, they do have an independent framework. They will be, they adhere to a particular religion, but they will not abide by each of those religious tenets. Say Martin Luther, for instance, he's typically typed as an INTJ, very devout believer, but went against certain tenets of the Catholic Church and ended up, instead of reforming the church like he meant to do, he created a whole new religion in Lutheranism. So, INTJs are generally independent. Next, INTPs. Now, these are oftentimes atheistic, or at the very least, they're just not very religiously minded. They're very, I would say, not necessarily just agnostic or atheist, but they're unconcerned. You can have an INFP or INFJ who is atheistic or agnostic, but they feel very intensely about it. The INTPs I know, they just don't, they're like, oh, if you proved God existed, okay, so like they don't understand the significance of religion or God's existence in general. At least that's what I've found. Out of all 16 types, I have found INTPs to be the least religious, and that's odd because they are theoretical, they're scientifically minded. You think they would wonder about the source of the Big Bang or mysteries of the universe, but no, they're just unconcerned. Moving on to ENTJs, they're sort of a do-it-all type. They can be religious, they might not be religious, but the biggest factor with ENTJs is that their focus is elsewhere. They may be very religious, but they don't spend that much time on it. They may be anti-religious, but they don't spend much time on that. It's different than the non-concern of the INTP. It's rather they are so concerned with their work or whatever mission they're on, or their business, or their focus is usually on TE, or I would say even SE types, and then they use their NI to further those things rather than religion. ENTPs, these would be my most agnostic type, and they fiercely defend it too. The ENTPs, I know, if they're in a room full of atheists, they'll start arguing on the point of they'll argue on the point of the theist, even if they don't believe. They love to play devil's advocate, and whatever the prevailing notion is around them, they'll play to the tune of the other. And toward that end, ENTPs, they never want to be decisive on religious items of belief. It's always like, well, what if this? What if that? Maybe it's this way instead. You can't really pin them down. They don't like that, and that doesn't go well with more disciplined religions. Like, I would say ENTPs of all the types are probably the least likely, along with their INTP brothers and sisters, they're probably the least likely to be Catholic, for instance. If there's any religious sentiment with ENTPs, I found it's mostly with, Eastern religions, things that offer different directions within a greater framework. Moving on to the NFs, for these people, religion will be more of an intuitive and feeling based thing. Common themes with the NF types will be finding religion in nature. That's what I've found. So let's start with the INFJs, NINFE. These types, I'd say, out of all 16, are the most likely to be deeply spiritual but anti-religious in terms of doctrine. So, they might believe in God, but they don't want to go to church, that kind of thing. They might even believe in central tenets of Christianity, but still not want to go to church. Or on the flip side, some of them might go to church for the social reasons, but have very specific beliefs that go against what is being taught where they go. In short, I have found them to be have the greatest distance between their beliefs and their religious actions, insofar as they can be deeply religious, at least according to themselves, but not be part of any religious community or institution, anything like that. INFPs, good luck figuring them out. I'd say that out of all these types, out of all 16, INFPs are probably the most self-reflective when it comes to religion. It's hard to get out of them what exactly they believe or don't believe. They may go to church, but you wonder, are they really here? Are they, what are they doing? What's going on in that mind of yours? It's hard to figure out. They have particular beliefs. They are very, they hold fast to those beliefs. Good luck ever changing an INFP's mind about anything religious. You probably won't even get in that discussion because it's unlikely for them to even share their deepest beliefs with you, so they're intensely private when it comes to religion, and just going by their actions, you can't tell where they're at on the scale of religion, neutral or anti-religious. But whatever they are, they feel it intensely, that's for sure. ENFJs, I find this, out of all 16 types, to be the most involved in a sort of community destiny. When you hear terms like the kingdom of heaven, or what's the point or meaning of it all, we usually reserve those kinds of questions, thinking of INFJs when we think of those questions. But it's really the ENFJs that really are concerned with, the big picture, the where is the whole human race going? Where are we going to be in 100, 1,000, 100,000 years? Where is the kingdom of God in terms of being present here on earth, as well as in the afterworld? That's the most conspicuous thing about ENFJs. They're concerned with the greater good, the community as a whole, whether that's the present community or the future one. That's all I have to say about them, I think, at this point. ENFPs, they are, if the types were a deck of cards, ENFPs would be the Joker, because I've seen everything from ENFPs. I've seen intensely religious, I've seen intensely atheistic, I've seen, if it's possible, to be intensely agnostic, saying you can't be atheist or theist, we just don't know, similar to their INFP brothers and sisters. They have intense feelings about things, but they're always evolving. That's the thing about ENFPs. They might have certain elements of beliefs they hold on to long term, but you're likely to get a different answer from them depending on what kind of mood they're in or what they're doing or who they're with. I've known ENFPs to change religions based on their relationships, stuff like that. Again, not always, because if there's any exception to the rule, it's probably an ENFP. That's the thing. They're so widespread. They're the wild card out of the whole bunch. But the one thing you can be sure of is they're always kind of evolving. They're always rethinking things. Nothing just stays the same with them forever. And that concludes that section. Next, the SJs. Now, these are the common traditionalists, ISTJs, which most of you who know me know that regardless of any other typings, that's what I always get on my own test. So I can say ISTJs are comfortable in routine. So whatever religion or partial religion or anything they're involved with, they like the sense of routine. And back to church or Catholicism more specifically, it works good for ISTJs because the structure, the routine, every mass kind of starts and ends the same way. It gives you a sense of comfort and security. You know what you're going into, you know what to expect. There's no big surprises. It lasts about the same length every time. The music's basically the same every time, and that gives ISTJs, and we'll see ISFJs also, but mostly ISTJs, it's comfort in routine. So whatever little routines, not just outwardly at church, but inwardly in your own spiritual life, your own morning prayer, your nighttime prayer, it's those routines that give strength and foundation, grounding to your religious beliefs. And that's why prayer and such is so important. Next, ISFJs. Similar, but ISFJs focus more on the routine of the relationships than on the routine of the liturgy or the service or the time or experience involved. They're thinking of the same people they're going to see at church, or the same relationships, the same pleasantries that go on before and after church. They really appreciate, I'd say all the SJs in general are more likely to be okay with church than any of the other temperaments or types. But ISFJs in particular like that secure social aspect of a routinized kind of church-going experience. And that's where they find their religion. ESTJs, these are the traditionalists. When I think, again, back to Catholicism, ESTJs make the perfect Catholics. They're traditionalists. They like routine. They like structure. They like things to be a certain way. They're even better Catholics than the ISTJs. Why? Because a lot of ISTJs, I want to say us, but the ISTJs will kind of hide in a corner and enjoy the church and then just want to go home. The ESTJs take in the full range of the church experience. They have everything that the ISTJ likes, but on top of that, they can also be social, almost like an ESFJ. The ESTJs are great taking leadership roles in a church, volunteering, stuff like that, so that, even though they might not think about their beliefs that deeply, they don't need to, because they make up their minds and then they move on. They're very good at doing the right thing without questioning it or worrying about it or overthinking it. ESTJs are, the quintessential churchgoer, I would say. Now we go to ESFJs, right alongside the ESTJs. If I had to rank them, I would put these two at number 1 and 2 in either order, really. ESFJs, they have the structure, they love the social aspect of church, and that's something that I personally really lack. I have the belief, I have the routine, I have the personal prayer, but the social part I can do without. I usually hide or have an excuse why I can't go to dinner or an extracurricular activity. The ESFJs just love that, and they'll be a big part of any church group regardless of the religion. And ultimately, that's, even though I personally undervalue this aspect, I think overall what church offers believers is a community of like-minded people. So the church isn't a building, it's a group of people. That's what makes a church, and the ESFJ embraces that to the utmost. Okay, now to our SPs. These ones have the most, I would say, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but the most, I would say, childlike way of interacting with God and interacting with their belief systems. We'll start with ISTPs, and I find them similar to the INTPs in that they're very unconcerned. If you prove that there's a God to an agnostic ISTP, it won't really matter to them. They'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, all right. Yeah, I agree. It is more likely there's a God than not. All right. And then they'll go along with their day and go surfing or go eat or do whatever they're going to do. Likewise, if an ISTP loses their faith, it doesn't make or break them like it would almost any of the other types. They're almost closed off to this sort of religious sentiment. Whether they believe or fall somewhere in that gray area in the middle, or they're unbelievers, ISTPs tend to be unconcerned, not necessarily focused elsewhere like an ENTJ, but or independent beliefs like an INTJ. They're just sort of not that interested in religion or religious elements, and they can believe and still be that way. That's the interesting part. Next, ISFPs. These types, not very traditional when it comes to church. I don't think ISFPs in general would make good Catholics, for instance. But they're, along with INFPs, I would say they're most likely to find God in nature. God in the flowers and the bees and the colors and the sunsets. Find God in beauty. They may go to church, more likely, probably not. But their spirituality is deeply tied to the earth and to the elements, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's pretty cool, and I do believe you can find God in a flower just as easily as in a church, if not more so at times. So ISFPs, a lot of valuing nature and finding God in nature. ESTPs, I would call these the most childlike type with faith and morals, and I don't mean that in a pejorative sense at all. I mean that, like the natural, lovable rogues that ESTPs are and can be. Time after time, I've read biographies of ESTP people like Winston Churchill, George Patton, Alexander the Great. All of them have this childlike prayer and faith, like, God, please let the weather clear so I can kill these Germans, that was Patton's prayer. Winston Churchill prayed to God about seeing the brilliant colors that heaven will have. Alexander the Great had different prayers about bringing his conquered people together. It's almost, I love how they let go of that structure and just get to the core of the issue. And in other words, they don't use church or priests that much. A lot of them are believers, believe it or not. More ESTPs are believers than not. But they have a very direct line to God. They're the most likely to do away with all the side stuff. They're not going to be into, the signs and symbols as much, or the, liturgy of a church. They just go straight to God. Hey, God, it's me, I hope everything's good. Listen, I'm having a problem with this. And there's beauty in that. And there's childlike genius in that. In fact, that's how Jesus taught us to pray as Christians. So ESTPs, that's my take on them. And they go to their own morals too. Out of all 16 types, the ESTP is the most likely to say, okay, God, look, I know this is kind of a sin, but I know you understand where I'm coming from and why I'm doing this, that kind of thing. Next, ESFPs. And I would say ESFPs are the most religiously independent. Again, they can be very religious, regardless of what religion they follow, but they're not going to follow the church. Similar to their ENFP cousins, they are very independently minded. I've known a lot of ESFPs who they will be, full-on Christians, but totally disagree with the church on 2 or 3 issues, but they still consider themselves Christian, but they don't believe in this part of it. And whereas take an SJ type, they would think, well, if you don't believe this, then you can't be part of the club. ESFPs are like, why not? I could be part of the club and still not believe in this part, So I think church can be difficult for them. I think their beliefs, as long as they can keep some sort of routine about their religious devotion, they'll be okay. But I find ESFPs to be very independent when it comes to religion. And they're, out of all 16 types, I would say ESFPs are the least likely to connect their religion with their actions, so to speak. In other words, if you were to say you're a Christian and haven't been to church in 20 years, an ESFP would be the most likely to say, yeah, what's wrong with that? That you don't have to go to church to be a good Christian. Whereas other types like an ISTJ or ESTJ would say, no, you do have to. So that's all I got. I think the upshot of all of this is that there are different approaches and different paths to God, as well as unique challenges to each of these types. And I'll get into that in another video. But for now, it's gone on long enough. Thanks. Have a good one. Peace out.